General Hospital will reveal the twilight descended upon Port Charles, bathing the city in a brilliant orange glow that reflected off the glass-fronted buildings and rippled across the harbor waters. Joss stood motionless by the window of her modest apartment, her slender fingers resting lightly on the weathered windowsill as her contemplative gaze drifted toward the bustling port. The familiar scene of boats gently rocking against the docks and dock workers finishing their evening shifts seemed somehow different tonight, as if the entire world had shifted on its axis while maintaining its familiar appearance. She absently twisted a strand of her blonde hair, a habit she developed whenever deep in thought. The events of the past week replayed in her mind like scenes from a film she couldn't quite believe she was starring in. Just 7 days ago, her life had been relatively normal, or at least as normal as life could be in Port Charles. Now, everything had changed, pivoting dramatically after that unexpected meeting with Brennan. Jack Brennan, the WSB chief with his steel-gray hair and penetrating ice-blue eyes that seemed to dissect her very thoughts, had summoned her to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of town. She remembered how the leather chair had creaked beneath her as she shifted uncomfortably under his analytical gaze. The room had smelled of coffee and something else, perhaps the weight of secrets that had been shared within those walls over the years. "We've been watching you, Jocelyn," he had said, his voice carrying the gravitas of someone accustomed to making life-altering decisions. "Your instincts, your resilience, your ability to navigate complex situations, these are qualities we value at the WSB. The World Security Bureau, an organization she had only heard mentioned in hushed tones throughout her life in Port Charles. An organization that operated in the shadows, protecting the world from threats most people never even knew existed. Brennan had placed a manila folder on the desk between them, sliding it toward her with one finger. "This is an opportunity to prove yourself in the world of intelligence operations. Something that could change the trajectory of your life, if you're willing to take the risk." The cold, calculating look in his eyes had told her this wasn't simply a request, it was a carefully orchestrated recruitment, one that had likely been planned for some time. And despite every rational thought screaming caution, she had found herself nodding, accepting a challenge that would plunge her into a world she barely understood. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, Joss's mind conjured the image of Sidwell, the target of her first assignment. The mysterious man with his salt and pepper hair always perfectly styled, his tailored suits that spoke of wealth and refinement, and that smile, a slight upward curve of the lips that never quite reached his eyes. Those eyes remained vigilant, calculating, as if constantly assessing threats and opportunities. Since his arrival in Port Charles 3 weeks ago, Sidwell had seamlessly integrated himself into the city's social fabric. He'd made appearances at charity events, befriended key figures in the community, and demonstrated an uncanny knowledge of the city's history and current affairs, knowledge too detailed for someone who claimed to be a mere business investor new to the area. Joss had observed him from afar initially, noting the patterns that others might miss. The way he would excuse himself precisely when certain individuals entered a room. How he seemed to materialize at locations moments before significant events unfolded. The hushed phone conversations in what sounded like coded language, and the clandestine meetings in seemingly random locations throughout the city. Each observation added to her growing suspicion that Jens Sidwell was far more than he appeared to be. Brennan's briefing had been succinct but loaded with implication. "Your mission is to get close to Sidwell. Gain his trust. Discover his true purpose in Port Charles." His voice had dropped to an even lower register as he continued, "This is your opportunity to prove your value to the WSB. Sidwell is not who he claims to be. We need to know what he's doing here and whether he poses a threat to national security or to the stability of Port Charles itself." The folder had contained photographs of Sidwell in various locations around the world, Moscow, Beirut, Singapore, always in proximity to individuals flagged as persons of interest by various intelligence agencies. There were gaps in his history, periods where he seemed to vanish completely before resurfacing with a different identity or in a different hemisphere. Standing by the window now, Joss felt a complex wave of emotions washing over her. There was undeniable excitement pulsing through her veins, the thrill of being chosen, of being deemed capable of operating in a world few ever glimpsed. This was an opportunity to test her limits, to discover capabilities she perhaps never knew she possessed. The daughter of Carly Corinthos and Jasper Jacks was no stranger to challenging situations, but this represented an entirely new arena. Yet alongside the excitement lurked a persistent anxiety that coiled in the pit of her stomach. The risks were substantial and the consequences potentially devastating. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, fiercely protective and intuitive enough to sense when her daughter was hiding something significant. Then to Sonny, her former stepfather, whose connections to the underworld of Port Charles meant he had eyes and ears everywhere. What would happen if her cover was blown? How would her involvement with the WSB affect those she loved if things went sideways? The faces of friends and family flashed through her mind, people who might become collateral damage if she failed or if Sidwell proved more dangerous than anticipated. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders, making her question whether she had made the right decision in accepting Brennan's offer. The sudden chime of her phone cut through her thoughts, startling her back to the present moment. The screen displayed a message from an unidentified number, Kelly's. 8 p.m. Have information about Sidwell. Joss furrowed her brow, studying the cryptic text. This could be a valuable lead, a chance to gather intelligence before making her approach to Sidwell. Or it could be a trap, a test, or something far more sinister. But this was precisely what she had signed up for when she accepted Brennan's proposition, a world where trust was a luxury and every interaction potentially carried hidden motives. She glanced at her watch, 7:15 p.m. Just enough time to prepare herself mentally and physically for whatever awaited her at the familiar diner that had been a constant in her life since childhood. As darkness fully enveloped the city, Joss moved away from the window, her heart beating a rhythm slightly faster than normal. She opened her closet, selecting clothes that would allow her to blend in, nothing too memorable or attention-grabbing. As she changed, she contemplated the rumors circulating about Sidwell. Was he truly a WSB agent himself, as some had speculated? Was he working for a rival organization? Or was he a lone operator with his own agenda? Joss was determined to uncover the truth, regardless of where it led or what dangers it might present. She checked her appearance one last time in the mirror, hardly recognizing the determined young woman staring back at her. In her eyes was a newfound resolve, the look of someone stepping willingly into the unknown. The rain-slicked streets reflected the glow of street lamps as Joss made her way toward Kelly's diner. Each step felt like crossing a threshold into a new reality, a world of secrets, danger, and difficult choices. But there was no turning back now. She had chosen this path, and she would see it through, whatever the cost. Inside the warmly lit diner, Sidwell sat alone in a far corner booth, his back to the wall, giving him a clear view of both entrances. He sipped his coffee methodically, his expression unreadable as his eyes continuously scanned the room. Was he an ally or an enemy? Did he already know about Joss's assignment? And most importantly, was she truly prepared to face whatever awaited her in the shadows? Meanwhile, in his office at WSB headquarters, Brennan reviewed Sidwell's file once more, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The pieces were in motion. Joss had entered the game. And Port Charles was about to become the chessboard for a much larger match than anyone could imagine. Across town, Sonny stood at the window of his office, gazing out at the harbor. He sensed something shifting in his city, new forces moving into position, new threats taking shape. And somehow, Joss, the daughter of the woman he had once loved, was in the middle of it all. Sonny didn't know the details, but his instincts told him a storm was coming. As Joss pushed open the door to Kelly's, the familiar bell announcing her arrival, her heart pounded in her chest. This moment marked the beginning of a new journey, one that might reshape not only her future but the fate of Port Charles itself. As her eyes met Sidwell's across the room, she knew there was no going back. Her first mission had begun, and the price might be far higher than she was prepared to pay. The shrill ring of her phone pierced the quiet of Joss's apartment, shattering her reverie. She had been lost in thought, staring out the window at the darkening Port Charles skyline, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities and fears about her new role with the WSB. The sudden intrusion of sound made her jump, her heart rate spiking as she reached for the device. The screen illuminated with an incoming message from an unknown number. Joss's brow furrowed as she read the cryptic text, Kelly's. 8 p.m. Have information about Sidwell. Her mind raced, analyzing every word. Who could be sending this? Was it a legitimate contact from the WSB or something more sinister? She glanced at the clock, 7:15 p.m. Barely enough time to prepare and make it to Kelly's. Joss bit her lip, weighing her options. This could be the break she needed, a chance to gather crucial intelligence on Sidwell. But it could also be a trap, carefully laid by someone who had discovered her new allegiance. This is exactly what I signed up for, Joss muttered to herself, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through her veins. When she had accepted Brennan's offer to join the WSB, she knew she was stepping into a world of shadows and danger. Now, that world was calling, and she had to answer. With determined movements, Joss began to prepare. She changed into dark jeans and a nondescript sweater, clothes that would help her blend into the evening crowd. She pulled her hair back into a simple ponytail and applied minimal makeup, enough to look natural but not memorable. From a hidden compartment in her closet, she retrieved the specialized phone Brennan had given her, quickly typing out a message documenting the text she'd received and her intention to follow up on it. The device was set to automatically send the information to a secure WSB server if she didn't enter a specific code within the next 6 hours, a small safety net in a potentially dangerous situation. As twilight deepened into night, Joss left her apartment, her heart beating a rapid tattoo against her ribs. The streets of Port Charles, so familiar and yet now tinged with an air of mystery, stretched out before her. Every shadow seemed to hold potential threats, every passerby a possible agent or adversary. Her mind whirled with questions about Sidwell. Was he truly a WSB agent, as some rumors suggested? Or was he working for a rival organization, perhaps the DVX or some other shadowy group with its own agenda in Port Charles? Joss had observed him from afar over the past few weeks, noting his impeccable manners, his careful speech that revealed little while seeming open, and the way his eyes constantly scanned rooms as if mapping exits and potential threats. He carried himself with the confident ease of someone accustomed to dangerous situations, yet he had seamlessly integrated himself into Port Charles society. Whatever the truth, Joss was determined to uncover it. She had grown up in this city, witnessed countless schemes and power plays. She was no stranger to risk, but this was different. This was stepping deliberately into a world where deception was currency and trust could be a fatal weakness. The rain-slicked streets reflected the neon signs and street lamps, creating a shimmering, otherworldly effect. Joss felt as if she were walking between two realities, the familiar Port Charles of her youth and the dangerous, secretive world she was now entering. Each step took her further from the life she had known and deeper into a realm of espionage and hidden agendas. As Kelly's came into view, Joss paused across the street, taking a moment to observe the diner. Through the windows, she could see the usual evening crowd. Couples enjoying late dinners, students from PCU hunched over laptops, the staff moving efficiently between tables. And there, in the far corner booth with his back to the wall and a clear view of both entrances, sat Sidwell. Even from this distance, Joss could see how his relaxed posture belied the alertness in his eyes as they continuously scanned the room. He sipped his coffee methodically, occasionally checking his watch with the precise movements of someone who valued efficiency. His expression revealed nothing, neither anticipation nor concern, just the carefully neutral mask of a man accustomed to concealing his thoughts. Joss took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Was Sidwell an ally or an enemy? Did he already know about her assignment? And most crucially, was she truly prepared to face whatever awaited her in the shadows of this new world? Meanwhile, in the sterile confines of WSB headquarters, Jack Brennan sat alone in his office, the blue glow of his computer screen illuminating his weathered features. On the screen was Sidwell's extensive file, photographs from operations spanning 2 decades, psychological evaluations, mission reports, and a list of aliases that stretched across continents. Brennan scrolled through the documents with practiced efficiency, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. Joss had taken the bait, stepping willingly into the elaborate game he had orchestrated. She showed promise, intuition, resourcefulness, and the kind of adaptability that couldn't be taught in any training program. "She's on the move," came a voice from the doorway. Agent Prescott, one of Brennan's most trusted operatives, stood with a tablet displaying a GPS tracker. "Heading toward Kelly's now." Brennan nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. "And Sidwell?" "Already in position. Has been for 20 minutes. Good." Brennan turned back to his computer, closing Sidwell's file and opening another, this one labeled simply Jax, J. The first page displayed a comprehensive profile of Jocelyn Jax, including family connections, psychological assessments, and potential vulnerabilities. "Let's see what she's made of." The pieces were in motion now. Joss had entered the game, a game far more complex than she could possibly imagine. And Port Charles, with its tangled web of alliances and enmities, was about to become the chessboard for a match with stakes higher than anyone in the sleepy port city could comprehend. Across town, in his penthouse office overlooking the harbor, Sonny Corinthos stood at the window, a glass of bourbon in his hand. The lights of the city reflected on the dark water below, creating patterns that shifted and changed with the gentle movement of the waves. Just like the power dynamics of Port Charles itself, always in motion, always evolving. Sonny had built his empire on an ability to sense shifts in those dynamics before they became apparent to others. And right now, every instinct honed through decades of surviving in a dangerous world was telling him something significant was changing in his city. New players were moving into position. New threats were taking shape in the shadows. And somehow, Joss, the daughter of Carly, the woman who had been such a pivotal part of his life for so many years, was at the center of it all. He didn't know the details, couldn't yet see the full picture, but his instincts rarely led him astray. "Max," he called to his loyal bodyguard who stood discreetly by the door. "I want eyes on Jocelyn Jax. Discreet, respectful, but I want to know what she's involved in." "Boss?" Max questioned, surprise evident in his voice. "Carly's daughter." Sonny nodded, his expression grave. "Something's happening, Max. Something big. And I need to know what it is before it blindsides us all." As Joss pushed open the door to Kelly's, the familiar bell announcing her arrival, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. How many times had she entered this diner throughout her life? How many celebrations, consolations, and ordinary moments had played out within these walls? Yet tonight, everything felt different. The weight of her new purpose transformed the familiar setting into something almost unrecognizable. Her eyes immediately found Sidwell across the room, and for a brief moment, their gazes locked. Something passed between them, a silent acknowledgement, perhaps, or a challenge. His expression remained unreadable, but there was a subtle shift in his posture, an almost imperceptible straightening of his shoulders that suggested recognition. Joss's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the magnitude of what was beginning. This moment marked the start of a journey that would reshape not only her future but potentially the fate of Port Charles itself. As she took her first step further into the diner, she knew with absolute certainty that there was no going back. Her first mission had begun, and the price, in terms of personal relationships, safety, and perhaps even her own identity, might be far higher than she was prepared to pay. But she moved forward anyway, embracing the path she had chosen and whatever consequences it might bring. The game was afoot, and Joss was determined to play it to the best of her abilities, no matter where it might lead her.